So I wish everybody welcome to this dialogue series on the GEO data sharing and data management principles. My name is Bente Gabi. I'm going to be the host today, but with also Marie-Françoise Vadreau that you know. Hello, Marie-Françoise.
Hello.
Marie-Françoise, I and Paola, we are the ones who are organizing the practical part. And then, of course, we have very strong support from our community of experts on data sharing and data management principles. And today you will learn about a new set of experts. I will go through some housekeeping first and introduce the dialogue series. And here we go. So I will start with sharing my screen. So first of all, we will kindly ask you to be engaged, but mute your microphones while you're not speaking, and raise your hand or write in the chat any comment or questions that you might have, and we will give the floor to you in between the presentations and at the end. This is a dialogue series. So enjoy the GEO dialogue series. And what are the dialogue series? We are today covering data management principles number 9 and 10, curation. We decided that it was time to advocate more these wonderful data sharing and data management principles. So that's one of the reasons we are doing this. We wanted also to create awareness of them for those who haven't heard, because, well, some of us in the GEO community knows about the principles, and some know them better than others. And we have new members also of the community, so we wanted to both create awareness and advocate for them. And we also wanted to create some capacity development material, so more sustainable resources on knowledge about the data sharing and data management principles. And particularly at this time, we found that with the focus on in situ data and law and policy, it was a right time to do this dialogue series. So the perspective and the structure of these webinars or dialogues are to include the in situ and law and policy components. We wanted also to engage the GEO work program members with examples, and you will have several today. And all of that we will look at, with all of that, we would look at each of these data management principles. And the structure is that for each of the dialogues, we have the theory, so the principle, and some examples, and also relate the GEO data sharing and data management principles with other principles such as fair, care, and trust. Very often we have complementarity, and it's useful to compare. So as you see, we have arrived at the 17th of October, the second to last of these first dialogues on curation. And this is just a reminder of the GEO data sharing principles. It's all about open data sharing. That's the default. We want to have minimum restrictions, and we want also minimum delay. And of course, and this cannot be said often enough, how important it is with metadata. So here they are, a little bit more in detail, these 10 data management principles. And as you can see today, we are discussing curation. There are very many links between this, but particularly because of the metadata. But today we are focusing on curation, and it's Joan Masso that will start to introduce us to this. But first, a little more information about my co-host, Marie-Françoise Vadreau. She is Innovation Director for Europe in the Open Geospatial Consortium. She is also a member of the GEO program board, and she has a long experience in the meteorological organization, the Météo France, and generally interested and involved in various projects such as NextGeos and currently eShape. My name is Bente Liabi. I'm also a longtime member of GEO. I have had many different roles. I'm particularly interested in bridging the gap between science and data production to applications. And currently I'm a member of the GEO Working Group on Data. And I have been a member of the GEO Program Board as well. And still maintain NextGeos, for instance, just to mention a few. Now, just a reminder, use the chat and raise your hand for comments and questions. And we will also publish a few polls during this dialogue. And we hope that you will help us answering. They should be very simple, and we will discuss the result as they come. So we have two data management principles today: review and processing, and identifiers, collectively called curation. This is the program, the agenda. The first one, as I said, will be the introduction. The theoretical part will be done by Joan Masso. We will have an example from meteorological institutions by Øystein Godøy. We will again talk about heritage space and mission data curation from ESA. And most likely it won't be Mirko, it will be Yolanda. Well, we will see that when that comes. We also look at data curation for citizen science. And finally, also but not last, a community co-created portal or even a repository, and how do we curate the data there. So we have both space-based data, we have in situ, and a mix of space-based and in situ. We have citizen science, and we also have a community repository combining all of this. So those are the examples, and I think we are ready to again be introduced to the theoretical part, as we call it. And Joan Masso has a long experience in everything doing with data, as a data managed expert, done lots of work on standardization, super involved in OGC, and also in citizen science, for that matter. And you can see here a lot of his project where he has been involved. And as a matter of fact, we will see today that he was doing work on the precursor, I would say, Joan, to what we now call the data management principles when you were working on the quality geo label. So with that, I give you the floor, Joan.
Okay, so we are talking today about data management principle number 9 and 10. Or both of them for curating the data. And yes, as you were telling us, we were involved in this idea of the geo label that afterwards was transformed in somehow the data management principle label. And well, we have all these nice icons that you can use to actually point to your data management principle that you are complying with. So today is about data preprocessing and persisting identifiers. The data management principle number 9 says that data should be managed to perform corrections and updates in accordance with reviews and to enable reprocessing as appropriate. Where applicable, this should follow established and agreed procedures. And the data management principle number 10 tells us that data should be assigned appropriate persisting, unique, and resolvable identifiers to enable documents to cite data they are based and data providers for receiving acknowledge of the use of their data. So about the data reprocessing, it is about taking advantage of the advancements in computer technology and processing algorithms in general So new ideas on how to generate long-time series that are homogeneous are really needed. And I'm citing here the efforts of CEO's analysis ready data to name one example. Of course, the climate long-time series could be another example, but also to adopt new formats, new emerging formats that are becoming popular, like this cloud optimized GeoTIFF that is so used these days, but in particular in the industry. Examples of these advancements and these processings that you have to do, they are ranging from simple corrections and quality filters that actually eliminate some of the biases or some of the random no data that from time to time are generated in sensors in order to higher the quality of the data set, and also reprocessing that can produce a completely new product with new characteristics that eventually can coexist, at least for a while, with the previous ones that were done before. It requires not only sustaining the actual data sets, but also sustaining the resources at some point, because this is a long run process, and maybe the sensor is already gone, and the budget associated with it's even long gone. So it will require new resources to actually do this reprocessing and look for a long-term finance, and that's really what we are seeing here in this example of the USGS Lancet products. Every time that I think about reprocessing, immediately comes to my mind this huge effort done to maintain things that were acquired in 1972 in the Landsat 1 mission, or some of the following ones. They did recently their second major reprocessing effort, and this is their description. They are saying that the Landsat archive resulted in several data products improvements that applied achievements in data processing algorithm developments and data access and distribution capacity. So here we are seeing again the dual sides. On one hand, the better algorithms, in the other hand, the data accessing mechanisms. Both can be definitely improved. If we go to persistent identifiers, please note that it's not only persistent, that means they are always the same. It is also that they are unique, and when they say unique, they mean unique in the world. And when they say resolvable, they mean that something needs to actually transform the identifiers into something tangible. Why we are interested in that? Because then the users will be able to cite unambiguously the data they are used, maybe to publish a research, maybe to generate some kind of a report, and that contributes to the transparency and reproducibility. Also, scientists that act as a data curators can then use this number of citations in their CVs in order to justify their work and show that they are, good scientists. And as I said, readers need to be able to resolve those identifiers. So some kind of a tool will be needed to actually transform the identifiers in some kind of a data links to actually get the data itself. Permanent identifiers are good in system of systems in particular. They are used to relate the metadata to the data and to the user feedback that could be also present. They are used to relate data sets together in a distributed environment, maybe for provenance, maybe for adding suggestions. And they are used in subjects and objects in the linked data mechanisms and networks. And while the data management principle number 9 was or has no correspondence with the first principles, actually, the data management principle number 10 is a perfect match for the FAIR F1. Data is assigned to global, unique, and persistent identifiers. Problem with persistent identifiers is that sometimes things are not so persistent, and more and more we have dynamic data sets that are being created, maybe because they are part of the Internet of Things, with these sensors constantly providing new input, or maybe they are part of the citizen science repositories where, again, new inputs are constantly added from new campaigns and so on. So the identifier created today will point to a different data set tomorrow. And the other problem is modern data sets. Some of them are so huge that actually you need to query them and to extract just a part of it, the one that is really relevant. Let's call it sub-data set. In this case, the identifier that points to the full data set do not represent our sub-data set. And every query is different, so every query will generate potentially a different sub-data set. The solution is the snapshot, no? That's the straightforward solution. So you create a frozen copy of the data set, or maybe the sub-data set, and that's the one that receives a persistent identifier. And how to do that, how to get a persistent identifier. Some systems does that already, like GBIF, that actually provides you with an identifier of your queries in the database. But if you do not have this capacity, you could use another. And here I'm just taking one data set about chemicals in the air. And we see, for instance, the snapshots that are loaded into Zenodo. So those are these Excel files. By the way, this is today is the spreadsheet day, they say. So that's a perfect slide for today's. And apart from these spreadsheets, we are seeing the permanent and unique identifier expressed in this case as a DOI, as a digital object identifier. But also we have this idea of resolver, when you have this persistent identifier and you build the URL to the resolver, and then you execute the URL, and then you go to the data URL, that in this case will be actually this page. So that's more or less it. This is just an introduction of the last two data management principles. And now we will hear more about examples in more detail.
Thank you very much, Joan, for this very nice overview of the two principles related to curation. Please ask questions. Raise your hand if you have questions to Joan on these principles. While you are thinking about that, I want to share the results. So maybe you have to unshare your screen, Joan, before I can share my results. I'm not sure. Let me know if you can see the results. You're muted.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, so you see that, well, the question was, we are asking about your relation to curation, and most of you actually do data curation, and I assume that there's a lot of you that are actually data managers of some sort. Nobody has subcontracted this task to anybody. And there's one who do not yet curate the data, and we also have a few who don't do data management at all. So you see, you see that there's a lot among us, or in this subgroup here at least, that actually do data curation. I'm looking for questions and I don't see that. So I think we can start on our row of examples on data curation. And the first one will be on in the field of metrology. So let me share the screen and introduce you to Øystein Godøy. He is a head of division for remote sensing and data management at the Norwegian Meteorological Institute, also popularly called MET.no. He is now currently sharing his focus on remote sensing and data management. And I know Øystein from data management perspective, He's involved very much in Arctic or polar type of data. So the SIOS, the Svalbard Integrated Earth Observation System, he is still, I think, Øystein, you have to correct me, that you are still ahead of data management there on the data management group. He's also deeply involved in WMO in various aspects, and I'm sure you will share with us some of your experience. So Øystein, I will give you the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me well? Or?
Yes, we can.
Switch to another microphone here. I will try to share my screen. And can you see my screen as well now?
Yes.
Thank you. So in addition to what you mentioned, I would like to say that I'm also trying to bridge. Yes, I'm first of all, I'm still involved in SIOS and in the other, both in the WMO activities and in the Arctic data management in general, actually representing WMO in the Arctic Data Committee. But on a general basis, I try to bridge between the science community and the operational community, and that's quite important through all the activities that we are taking on at the Met Institute. For in the polar regions, most of the observations come from the science community and not from the operational agencies. So when it comes to the data curation aspect, this is also somewhat some of a work in progress. So I will just skim through 3 slides here. And first of all, I would like to mention that there's a wide variety of data that we are handling. So we have various types of observations, numerical simulations, the weather models, the ocean models, climate models, etc. We've got remote sensing products from weather radar and satellite. And commonly for everything, we try to use the NetCDF file format for handling the data internally, or at least when we expose it externally to external users. However, we do have some other solutions where we have different data formats for dedicated communities. But part of the reason why we try to focus on the NetCDF is basically to have as much information as possible follow the data throughout the value chain. When it comes to the curation, we do have different type of approaches depending on the type of data that we are handling. And we do also, as most operational agencies, have quite a lot of legacy handling involved here. So we haven't necessarily been able to put all the, call it modern practices into the value chains for all systems. Some of the approaches are only based on in-house requirements. So we decide and determine how to handle the data. Example of this is our observation stations, where we sort of push them onto the WMO exchange, numerical models, some of the satellite data as well. While for other products, we rely on a hybrid approach involving both internal structures and procedures combined with, for example, external review boards. These examples of this would be the EUMETSAT Ocean and Sea Ice Satellite Application Facility, where you have both climate products and also operational data, ESA, CCI, etc. But in order to just address the principles that you mentioned here, we do have a number of different approaches here. One thing I would like to just stress here, and I focused most of my input here on the handling of the in situ data, the observations at the weather stations. We do have a dedicated system for this called the QualOps system. And this is basically a system which allows us to, within 5 minutes after reception of the information from the station, we have quality control data published on the interfaces that we have available for external people. And the quality control here is based on handling information from the WMO GTS, that's the NORCOM interface, our own observations collection from the weather stations, and then we also use the numerical weather prediction models as a measure to do the quality control. Everything is put into this input system. Then it's pushed onwards to a database where we do a quality, also rule-based quality statistical measures on the data, which is combined with a manual process. Basically, these rule-based quality controls is done within like a couple of minutes, maximum 10, 15 minutes after the data is received at the institute. The manual quality control can take up to a month after the data has been received. And this is a continuous process. These data are then published into a database that is actually accessible by external people. In this, also this is the process that is handling our climate data. When it comes to the data we exchange with WMO, for this purpose, it's basically just the rule-based quality control that is actually handled here. So the procedure for future updates is basically based on the human interaction here. So if we identify something on the data, then we have a full sort of handling and a versioning of those data. This system has some old elements in it. I will come a bit back to the identifier issue, so I won't go into more detail now. So the numerical model, numerical weather prediction model, ocean models, etc., are handled separately, and normally undergo internal release reviews, including parallel production. So we are comparing old and new software upgrades, etc., before new versions are deployed. We usually do no reprocessing on those data. When we do reprocessing on numerical data, it's basically what we call reanalysis. So when we want to have the old history, and that is sort of usually handled by a user demand as a user requirement when a community asks for updated information. Climate products are normally handled through a mix of internal and external reviews, resulting in a request for a reprocessed data set. And then it's separate, it's a new data set, and it's handled as a parallel data set to the old one. And we give notifications on old data sets being obsolete and new data sets are available for this purpose. On satellite remote sensing data, of course, here we have some in-house production. We have our own satellite reception system, but we are also reusing data through, for example, Central European services. For the Central European services, we don't do much except that flagging the information. In our own setup, we do continuously validate and reprocess data if necessary. So for products, we have validation processes identifying issues with the data. If they are serious, we have an internal review, and then we do a reprocessing. When it comes to the raw data, this is basically based on whenever we have new calibration or navigational issues, and then we need to update the data. When it comes to the persistent identifiers, there's also a legacy in the system on our side there. We have always used identifiers in the system. We also always have used double identifiers normally. We have an internal MET identifier. And for many of the data sets, we have WMO identifiers in addition. And there is a mapping internally in our system between the internal identifier and the external or the WMO identifier. In recent years, we've changed the internal identifiers, not for all systems, but for quite a few, towards using UUIDs with namespace enabled into it. And we are now adding a landing page resolver for this. And landing pages, we have like through this Arctic data center, that's actually a legacy of the International Polar Year, but we do have other systems as well. When it comes to what people often understand as a persistent identifier, we do have the opportunity to mint data sets with DOIs, but we are not doing that on a regular basis for everything. We do it whenever it's requested by the owner of the value chain. And there are different reasons for that. And we are then actively using both data set and data collection publications. For example, you have like a regular update of the data collection with a yearly new sort of quality control data set that is added to a collection. So the availability of and the type of identifiers minted for a data set depends on the value chain involved, the owner of the value chain, and the downstream users of the value chain and what they need. So what we see is that there will be more and more DOIs involved. To a certain extent, we think with the new elements we are doing on the internal identifiers, with resolving their the identifiers there, we can also handle much of this in-house. And practically, or to be quite honest, there is not much more sustainable or value in the DOIs than in the internal persistent identifiers, in the sense as long as we have the services around it. But for us, it's quite important to be able to trace back decisions made upon data to the actual data. And we have some in the history, some bad examples of decisions being made without actually people knowing which data was behind the decision, because we didn't have proper identification of the data sets, nor did we have proper versioning of the data set. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Øystein. It's quite impressive what you have to do in the meteorological and climate research setting. I think you illustrated quite well, so thank you very much for that. It seems that what was clear to me, at least, was that with the same data that you collect, you have different procedures of curation depending on the application. It's different for the operational part and the more long-term climate research application of the data.
No, to a certain extent, and not entirely. When it comes to observations, for example, it's the same sort of curation, regardless if it's an operational use of it or if it's the climate perspective. The only difference is that for the climate perspective, we have an added sort of checking that spans a longer sort of time span after the data is collected.
Yes.
So normally within a month after the data has been collected, then we have the climate consistent data.
Yeah, exactly. There was an extra loop, sort of.
But it's basically the same value chain handling it. And this is also the same, you know, for much of the remote sensing data and the other things. It just depends on how many steps in the value chain around the quality control and the sort of versioning of the data that you want to involve. Sometimes, for the operational perspective, time matters. So you don't have much time. Exactly. And we want the data to be continuously available in the numerical simulations to be used in the forecast. There's a difference between that and actually doing climate studies. So that's the main reason why there is a huge difference in them. But the problem is that I think when you have the heterogeneous data, there is normally a demand for heterogeneous procedures around the data as well. But the main principles are the same everywhere.
Yeah, the principle, but I noticed, because of course we understand for weather forecast, we want the forecast as soon as possible, whereas the climate data is more long-term, and that's why you can allow also this extra round, if you like, in the procedures. Okay, any questions? I think I see a comment from you, Joan. Please take the floor.
No, I was just thinking aloud, because when Øystein was mentioning that they have more than one unique identifier, I was kind of puzzled by the word unique. And then I realized that it's not that, you know, you only need one identifier per data set. What needs to be unique is that the identifier is used only once in a particular namespace. And here the WMO namespace was mentioned, and something so-called internal namespace was also mentioned. And that's what makes the identifier unique in that namespace.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Marie-Françoise?
Yes, hi, Øystein. You have presented several, I would say, levels in the process of the curation with different steps. Do you have all the means to advertise the quality and the stages of the curation? I mean, can you communicate about the quality which is in the different data sets?
Yeah, and this is there's a difference between the various types of data sets, but yes, we can, for all of them, actually communicate the quality at different steps in the process. You know, for the remote sensing data, we are normally using these level 0, level 1, level 2, etc., telling something about the procedures. For the in situ measurements, we have a number of quality flags that basically tells you which tests that have been completed on each of it, and the level and the quality and assurance you can have in the end value that comes in. And when you request data from the interfaces, you can actually ask for a specific level in the testing. So you don't have to have you can ask for the raw data if you want the raw data. You can have a certain number of tests that have been applied to the data if you want that. When it comes to remote sensing data and some of the other data, we are also adding, when it comes to quality, more like uncertainty measures instead of actually quality flags, because quality flags are a bit static in this context. So everything we do on remote sensing products, for example, comes with uncertainty estimates on the data that we expose.
Yeah, I have one more question, because you said that, of course, you have the weather station that provides operational in situ data, right? But you also, in the Arctic, that's not necessarily so. You have campaign type of data that are not operational in that sense. Do you treat them in the same fashion, or is there a special procedure that you add on to the, what you say, you aim to follow the same type of value chain, but how do you deal with that?
So we normally do accept data from the science community. In most circumstances, we leave the quality control to the scientists that actually upload the data, and we guide them on how to document the data and etc. We are a publisher more in that context. However, and for some data, we actually allow them to, these are, call it project-oriented data, but they're floating directly into this Qualops system. Those data, when they have the real-time access to the data, and we can get it in real time in-house, then it will follow the same procedure as all the other data. And we've actually extended it quite recently with operational data flows, for example, for permafrost data, which we didn't have earlier. So now we have real-time access to permafrost data and making them available within the same time frame, 5 to 10 minutes after having the data in-house, you have new profiles, quality controlled, etc. So it's a continuous update on those things. But we do believe quite a lot in actually training the scientists, those that actually know the data.
I will come shortly back to that, but first, Ian has a question for you, I think. You raised your hand, Ian.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, just a very quick question. I'm just wondering if you mentioned you're taking in ingesting scientist data, and I was just wondering if you're also using any sort of citizen science data at all in your procedures, your workflow.
To a certain, it depends on what you mean. Also, not in the broad sense, but in the sense that in our numerical weather prediction model, we have the NetOptimo weather stations, for example, directly floating into the numerical weather model, having them automatically assimilated, in the weather model. So you have sort of adaptation of the weather forecast depending on the observations that the citizens actually contribute into the system. This works well when you are situated in Oslo, where there's a lot of gardens with weather stations. It doesn't not work that well in Svalbard or remote areas, of course. But we are actually looking into opportunities working with the fishing fleet for similar purposes, as a fishing vessels that have a number of very good sensors that we could use.
Thanks.
Excellent. And before we move on to more space with Yolanda, I would like to share the results of the poll I posted when you were speaking, Øystein. And you said that you would like to teach the scientists more. And I think this group agree with you because we asked, do you think that data curation should be taught, taught, or could benefit from more capacity development, or cannot be taught? And obviously, most of you said teach or could benefit from more capacity development resources. So I think the community agrees with you that teaching data curation is a good idea. Yes, Øystein?
Just adding a comment to that. I've been working with universities in Norway for a long time, and it doesn't make sense to me that you have to learn, for example, a measurement technique or philosophy, for that sake, in natural sciences, but you don't learn how to take care of your data. That doesn't make sense to me. Yeah.
No. So now we have it recorded that this we can use this as proof. We can be supported by this. So thank you very much, Øystein. I know that you are a very busy man and that you need to move on. Stay on as long as you can, as we now are going to look at data curation from space or space-based data. You mentioned it briefly, Øystein, of course, but now we are definitely dedicated our time to space. And Yolanda, in the program, I said it was Mirko Albani. He is busy with taking care of ministers, I thought you said, Yolanda. So we are very happy that you, equivalently expert, can do the presentation. So let us know a little bit about yourself before you start your presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm Yolanda Maggio. I work for RIA Group, contractor working for ISA 20 years on missions. Before working with Mirko, I worked for Earth Envisat as operations manager. And now I'm service manager in the program of Mirko. I like this work because for sure we work a lot to have the opportunity to create a long-time series, to give the the world also the Heritage Mission and the Sentinel to have the chance to talk together for the climate change. With Mirko also I follow the international cooperation, in this case CEOS WIGIS, as already introduced by him, and thanks to this the last meeting at Tokyo, we had the chance to discuss with Paola about the data management principle and the tool, the self-assessment, and a lot of standard and best practices have been created at this stage. And I will present also to you the maturity matrix in which the data management principles are well recognized. Okay, I can share my screen now.
Yes.
Share, and I can start. Okay, can you see?
Yes.
Well, my screen. Okay. Okay, it's not important to repeat that we are in the big data period. 40 years of space science, earth science stored in our archive. We have also the enormous amount of data coming from Sentinel now. And we know that we have to know the past to understand the present. For this reason, we started with preservation in our program. And then we passed to the other data management principle like discoverability, accessibility, and curation. In particular, I would highlight that in our path in the data curation and data preservation, we have also created a new profile, a new role, the data curator, that is composed by different role. Because as you already asked before, if the data quality has involved in which step, we have the data in the data curation, we have the data curator, the quality manager, the preservation manager, the expert on sensor, and so on. This is the pillars of our activity. In this way, we present to you in which way we talk about preservation, curation, and data stewardship, because the data stewardship is also the planning, funding, management, and certification, high level, that you need if you have 20 heritage missions, because you have to plan well also the budget. The curation, in particular for data management principle, also the how you organize the data, how you present the data, but also how you improve, in which way you can add value to the data. And also, it seems that low technical level, but the formatting of the data, the language of our data. Consider that we had a pilot project in the past with GERS mission, a short mission, Japanese mission, 1978, that thanks to the curation of this mission, together with GERS, together with CSAT, sorry, GERS, and also ERS, we discover the 5 kilometers lost in the glaciers. And we hope that this activity can continue also with Sentinel, in order to understand, to show to the politician that the climate change exists and is a real problem now. This is the GEO data management principle, in particular for the curation. DMP 9, DMP 10, only because I want to show you that we follow your experience. We take the opportunity when you prepare the data management principle to create some best practices that can help the data owner in focusing on your data management principle. In particular, we created the preservation guidelines. In particular, the team 7 is on data exploitation, reprocessing, including also the facilitation for data citation. Another best practice is the preservation workflow, in which for each phase of a mission, initialization, consolidation, implementation operations, we explore the requirement for curation. The PID, the persistent identifier best practices, in which we put also recommendation for all agency attending the similar meeting, the recommendation in which you have to present the landing page, because I will show you later, we use the landing page also for the provenance, for the integrity, because we put in the landing page also which element created this data, which version of the processor, and so on. I move this, okay. And then at the end, the WGIS data management and stewardship maturity matrix, in which all GEO data management principles are in, with more information, with more detail. Concerning the PID, the persistent identifier best practices, as already said, it was created collecting requirement coming from different agencies, European, but also international. We decided to use the DOI as a recommendation. And we put also, as already stated, a lot of recommendation on how to create and which information put in the landing page. This is an example, this is how we have implemented the service using Satellas is a tool in which in automatic way you can create, register the DOI and assign the DOI. At the moment, we, Ria, Isa was, okay, do you accept? I can reply, huh? That is curated, okay, I can check later. ESA has been accepted as a member of DataSite, and now we have the new prefix assigned, and we are using this kind of prefix. The crossref used in the past has remained for documentation and other stuff, and we are thinking if we can transfer or not the old PID registered in crossref to DataSite. few example. I don't know if you see, because I have okay, the first one is on AVHRR. Mirko Albani already introduced this fantastic reprocessing activity performed on these AVHRR NOAA POE missions, 30 years of time series. And as you notice, we have the landing page contain the DOI, and if you download the DOI, download the product, you can find in the product the DOI. I would clarify that we decided together with all agencies to have only the DOI assigned at dataset level. And we put the DOI at dataset level, at collection level, inside each single product. In this way, the user, the final user, can retrieve information on the origin of this dataset through the landing page. And now I will introduce you the maturity matrix. I don't know if you see, but in the initial part of the column, you see the 5 data management principles. You have discoverability, accessibility, usability, preservation, and curation. As you see in the usability, we have a lot of new element, more detailed element, like the data uncertainty, data validation, and quality control. We gave a lot of importance on the data quality, because it's important also circulate and put available data with a high level of quality, to explain well which indicator of quality the product contain inside. I put only a snapshot of the curation area in the data management in the maturity matrix, the data process reprocessing, and the persistence resolvable identifier. I would give you more details on the maturity matrix. 12 components for 5 areas of interest. And the color explain you which component are relating to the areas, the relevant areas. We have 4 levels of maturity: level 0 not managed, level 1 partially managed, level 2 managed, and level 3 fully managed. But I want to give you more detail about the maturity matrix. As you see here, we have the generation process. We started with the maturity matrix for long-term scientific data stewardship created by the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization. We add inside the data management principle. Then we went through the RDA FAIR data maturity model, and we put in the maturity matrix all needed element to grant that after the activity following the maturity matrix, the data are fair. We had the new version of the WMO stewardship maturity matrix for climate data. We analyzed also these, and we put few other elements missing in our maturity matrix. And at the end, we put also as I already stated, we put major emphasis on the data quality, including a maturity matrix created by NASA and ESA at working group Calval level, also in the CEOS, the frame of CEOS. I know that this is under continued evolution, because we know that now FAIR increase the information and so on. For this reason, I think that our maturity matrix could be a live document, and for example, every 3 or 4 years, it should be refreshed with terminology, but also with the new principle. To retrieve all of the best practices and element, I put here the screenshot of the WIGIS CEOS website, in which we have, together with Mirko, we manage the data, the preservation and stewardship interest group, and in which you can find really all best practices. And now I would give you some example of data curation at ESA. Okay, this is the maturity matrix. In which way we use this maturity matrix? Not only to do a self-assessment of the status in your agency of the stewardship of the data, but we use also the maturity matrix to set the final objective that the program want to reach. Here I put the example of AVHRR curation project started in 2017. And in green, you can see the level of maturity before starting the project. You see a really low level. We don't have any level 2 of maturity. And for the quality, we have no information on the data set. This is the activity, the objective decided with Mirko and with the expert. You notice that the quality was not analyzed, but only because these 2 columns were added in the last year, and this was done in 2017. This picture shows you the level of maturity that the Heritage Space Program want to reach for AVHRR. And inside each cell, you can have the list of the tasks that you have to do to reach the relevant level. It's more simple because when you finish, you can do the diff between the ESIS and the objective you have to reach, and you can put in the statement of work or CCN or every means you have to ask activity, you can put each task that you want to reach in this kind of reprocessing campaign. Here I put a way to notice how many activity we have to do to reach the objective. This was the same project analyzed in 2018. As you notice, we have reached also the objective, but also in partial way. You see in the dashed color, we have also partially reached some, for some component, the level 3. This is the verification done in 2022, and you notice how the data owner can have under control the stewardship of each dataset you want to improve, you want to curate. Another example I put here is on Earth reprocessing. We have created the fundamental data records for the altimetry, 30 years of fundamental data records, really used for thematic data product, for the land, sea, atmosphere, ocean, coastal, ocean waves, and highland waters. I think that's all, yes. If you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Yolanda. That was very impressive. And I think very shortly, we can say that data curation requires some expertise.
Yes, expertise and collaboration and communication. Because if some pieces of puzzle is missing, you cannot go on in the improvement. We know the lesson learned, we are collecting lesson learned also. And in order to improve also the process inside ESA, and we notice that if you have, in this way, you have all clear, the landscape is clear. You have each component relating to a particular data curator. You need the feedback from him, and then you can measure the maturity matrix. Can your self-assessment, for example, can be used during each step. Each 6 months, I don't know, to notice the improvement or the improvement in your activity, or if you need to create a particular new task because for particular mission, because we know that every mission has a peculiarity, and we can add some notes for particular data set. If you, for example, for particular data set, you don't need to do any task, you should justify This task is not foreseen for this mission because the sensor doesn't need this check and so on.
Absolutely. So now I will, I'm looking at the time. We have 2 more presentations or short introductions, but before that, there has been some comments. So I would like to have some discussion and dialogue around Yolanda's presentation. The first thing I will say, just another observation that you illustrated, Yolanda, how the GEO data management principles are complemented and strengthened, or vice versa, with the FAIR principles. I think your example really illustrated that. So this is what we are also concerned with to show in this series. Now I see that we have some questions, and I think you can. Who was it? Chris. I see, Chris, you have a question on the DOIs and the PID.
Yeah, just a short question. So because you are dealing with big or large data sets, so if you installed in your processes also subsetting and data fragments and how to align these with DOIs?
Yeah, I don't know if I well understood your question, but if you have a data set with a DOI, but a user download only a frame of this, for us, this is a new data set. If you need to do any particular analysis on this. For example, we put a new lesson learned in the bid best practice because we had 2 data sets coming from 2 frame of data set, coming from 2 complete collection, put together for the Africa. For us, it represents a new data set. It means that new DOI is needed. For us, this is the meaning of DOI.
Perfect. Great.
Yeah, thank you. And otherwise, I see comments from Marie-Françoise that there's a lot of content that deserves also further deepening. And we will see what the follow-up will be eventually. But let's move on. I have a poll, but I think I will wait with the poll until after we have introduced and listened to Chris.
I don't know, there is also Joan Masso.
John Masso also had a question. Yes,
he put no, not 12. Yes, we have 12 components grouped for 5 principles, because we put different column for the data quality because it's too difficult to have all in a unique column. It's only to better describe and divide the uncertainty in a particular column, divided with the simply data control and the data validation. It's only to have a simple way to see the matrix, because the matrix, during the WIGIS working group Calval joint meeting with WIGIS, I had to print like a poster for each attendee the maturity matrix, because it's difficult to go in, and we decide to divide the quality because it's really important to have clear the step in the quality for us, for our point of view.
Okay, thank you, Yolanda. Okay, Ian, I was going to introduce Ian. Ian, let me see here. I will share my screen so that you get to know Ian a little bit before I give him the floor. So Ian McCallum is a research group leader of novel data ecosystems for sustainability within the advanced systems analysis of the program at the International Institute for Applied System Analysis, IASA, in Austria. He has been involved in citizen science for as long as I have known you, and probably before we met also, Ian. So we are super excited to learn about your latest in citizen science, the GEO Wiki, and the citizen science platform for Earth observation.
Great, thank you, Bente. So I'll just also share. Super, great. Okay, thanks very much. So yes, I will just give a brief run through on curation around citizen science data. So I will just be brief and just touch on a few points related to citizen science around data curation. I won't probably be talking too much about sort of reprocessing data. Actually, from our experience, we're not doing so much of that now, although I can see some of that certainly coming in the near future. But we've been working in the citizen science domain for probably the last decade or so, and maybe a little bit before we met Bente, but not too much. And we went into that because of really a need at the time, actually, to have better data at hand for validation and for developing new algorithms, but also uncertainty and quality checking of data that was ultimately going into models, and there was just really little data at hand, in situ sort of data, and so that's sort of what led us into the citizen science. And so I think everybody knows that this is in the last decade. There's really been an explosion of data coming out of citizen science, and a lot of it is quite relevant for the scientific community. There's a lot of issues always around quality and so forth, and meanwhile standards as more and more data grows and so forth. But we won't be touching on those really so much today. But I think it is probably also fair to say that to some extent there's been less attention from the data science community on the citizen science data for many sort of obvious reasons, maybe. I mean, it hasn't been around that long in terms of sort of this, this recent proliferation that we've seen. And in particular, this real growing amount of data. Although there have been groups who have been working around this and looking quite intensively at citizen science data in the last decade, and many of you on the call today have been part of that. And so CoData has had working groups. The European Citizen Science Association, EXA, and GEO has also had a very active role there to play. So looking at the citizen science landscape, there are many initiatives, and it's growing, and it's really that makes it also a bit challenging, actually. And many of these initiatives are they're very bottom up, low budget. They maybe just sort of appear and then disappear and so forth. So data curation is kind of the last thing on a lot of their minds, and so that's also a little bit of an issue, maybe a challenge in this. But I think probably the best example, if we think about this type of data, really is in the biodiversity space, and GBIF is really an excellent example to look at, and probably most of you are familiar with this. But this is the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. They have currently over 2 billion occurrence records in the database. And certainly more than half of that has been generated by volunteers to some extent. So essentially citizen scientists and volunteer observations. So really, it has a major impact on the amount of data that we have at hand for monitoring biodiversity. And if you see there also, the publishing institutions, so there are almost 2,000 institutions actually publishing that data, which feeds into this. So a lot of organizations behind this, and I think the thing that's working here is that this GBIF provides this infrastructure on top, which is kind of organizing the whole area, if you will. So their sort of general workflow is they have these different types of data feeding in, ultimately then available for people to visualize, search, and download. So data discovery and ultimately and usage by providing this kind of infrastructure on top. And that's just a screenshot of sort of the amount of data that you see in there globally. There's lots of areas, of course. It looks better perhaps than it really is, but it's nonetheless, it's really quite amazing and quite impressive. So I think really the biodiversity field is probably in terms of this sort of citizen science data, the farthest ahead and most organized. If you look here, in terms of DOI, so they've been also tracking the amount of peer-reviewed journal articles coming out of GBIF mediated data, and that's really been growing over the last decade. So you can see that from about 2015 onwards, and it's really it's growing. So the number of publications are growing. So because of ultimately the data curation that's in the background, and having all of this infrastructure on top. You see this data is actually being picked up by the scientific community. When this data is actually downloaded, you receive a DOI link back to the original data. And so then you can publish this data, and the providers are then getting this credit through via the GBIF platform, but back to the ultimate data curation and publisher. So that's also a very nice trend to see. Maybe then just and I'll just have a few slides to reflect on this from our standpoint. So this is this GeoWiki platform that Bente was mentioning at the start. So this is something that we've set up about 10 years ago or so, and are continuing to build and improve on this. It's growing. So we have some 22,000 contributors, 18 million image classifications done. So we've been doing a lot of, in particular, image classification inside of this platform, but we do a lot of additional citizen science work as well. And this is, again, a little bit reflective of the issues here in citizen science. So a lot of different themes and topics, and some of those are very short-lived exercises. Others are longer term. But covering a citizen science can go in so many different directions that it's a bit difficult to kind of get the big picture on it all. But what's been a bit of a lifesaver for us actually is these repositories, which are now available. And Juan Masso then showed us the Zenodo one, and this is what we are also using now. Our institute also actually does data curation here, but they're also actually recommending us now to put our data onto Zenodo. And so we are doing that, the data that's derived from this GeoWiki platform in particular. And if you look in Zenodo, there are 2,000 plus sort of separate kind of instances of citizen science data being placed in there. So it's really, really growing. This is becoming certainly one of the repositories tailored for, or certainly applicable for citizen science data. Thinking about the trust kind of principles as well here. I mean, they've existed since 1954. It's attached to CERN, and so it has also funding for the next 20 years. So that's also very good. That's very important when we think about these repositories in terms of data curation and going forward. So we are putting our data in here slowly. So we have it in many different repositories, and not all of it is in repositories, but we're in the process of moving that finally into sort of one place, creating a community within Zenodo, and then yeah, obviously then with that, you have these, you're given the DOI when you add the data, you have versioning. So if you are doing updating and so forth, then you'll have additional versioning attached to that. So all that can be tracked, as Juan was also mentioning. One thing though, definitely that we need more control on is also the metadata going in here, and we're also using a lot of different formats. So I see here TXT files. I know we do a lot of with CSV files, but also GeoTIFFs, and so still there's a lot of work that needs to be done on this to kind of standardize and improve it, because it's you're quite free as to which data you actually put in here. So I think there's still a lot of room for improvement. The other thing attached to the repositories, which has also been a real benefit for us, are these data journals which are coming, and that's very important for the academic community that's generating a lot of this data. So we are able to put the data on a repository and publish a description of that data in, for instance, Nature Scientific data, which we do quite a bit, so part of the Nature family. And then you have really a documented credit and a research publication describing the data, plus the actual data behind that in a repository of your choice, again with the DOI. So that's also been a real plus for the academic community. So more and more people are doing this, and you're seeing more and more of these journals appearing as well. And I just want to close on one slide, because this is a actual campaign that we have running right now under the GeoWiki platform. This is a project we have with ESA, actually, which is generating GNSS data, so Global Navigation Satellite Services data. And the amount of data is actually really huge. So the app is essentially just you install the app, and it automatically is then downloading the data onto your phone if you allow us to do that. And so it's huge amounts of data. So now we're getting into this big data space, which we were not in before. So that's why it was quite easy for us to sort of handle the data in the past, and now that's changing with more and more success of these various campaigns, and also additional things like imagery and photos coming into to the citizen science data that we're collecting, things start to get very large. So we're now at this point actually now about sort of looking at new and improved other methods to sort of curate this data. And yeah, we don't have a solution exactly for this one yet, but it's something that we're working on. So I just wanted to mention that at the end. So I think I'll stop there and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Ian. And then the floor is yours for questions, and raise your hand while you are writing or thinking about raising your hand. I was just, the identifiers. You said you're giving credit to the citizen scientists or those who are providing citizens data. Now, Joan was telling us that there were several reasons for the usefulness of the unique or persistent identifiers. So transparency, and also for a federation, and giving proper credit. And for citizens, I mean, if you have a citizen science campaign or you have so many different citizens providing data, how do you, I mean, in a scientific publication, for instance, how do you handle like thousands of data providers, for instance, in a DOI?
Yeah, that's a good point. So that gets a little bit tricky. So again, that's sort of, I guess, related to sort of volume and success, as you mentioned. So in the past, in the early days, in a lot of our campaigns, the number of contributors was small, and so we often had campaigns, and that was one of the incentive for people to participate. They would be a co-author on a publication, and so we were doing that in the past. But of course, when it gets to something like this, where they start to get extremely large, then it gets more difficult. So a lot of citizens, so if you take the biodiversity example, citizens are actually going through this iNaturalist app, for instance. So they're downloading one of those apps and they're contributing to that. And by doing that, they kind of, they're sort of they're offering their data for free in a sense, and agreeing to be a volunteer and providing the data. And so they don't actually get that sort of direct credit back in a sense there. So I guess that, they couldn't really trace their work through per se to maybe to a scientific publication that way when you're contributing through one of these apps. So for our campaigns, we're very much trying to incentivize still. So we sometimes use some gamification techniques, and we still do offer some prizes, or we have leaderboards and these sorts of things, and create a little bit of competition and so forth. But ultimately, at some point, once the amount of people involved grows to a certain point, it's very difficult to give the credit back to these volunteers.
To the volunteers,
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so there are special challenges related to the to citizen science collected data. I'll show you before I give the floor to you, Carol, I just wanted to share with you the poll for those that are data users, which principle could be any of us for citizen science. And the question is, the questions, there were several, do you just want to access raw data and curate it yourself? A few of you prefer that, actually one. And are you happy with any data made accessible? No need to know if it has been curated. Everybody wants to actually have some knowledge, some curation of the data. You can see it's more reliable. It will analyze as ready data is definitely the most preferred, as you can see here.
I'm not sure you shared the results, Bente.
Oh, sorry. I forgot to. Thank you for reminding me. So here you see the poll. Now you see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So most wanted to know that the data is curated, and analysis ready product will be preferable. Okay. So in interest of time, I will then move on to Carol. Carol Harwat is going to talk about curation. Well, I will share with you my screen so you can also see Carol and his bio. He has a background from theoretical cybernetics, but he has been very much involved in data management in various sorts, in data standard working. He's currently a lead of a working group for agriculture in OGC, the Open Geospatial Consortium. He's been co-organizing and taking initiative to a series of hackathons, the Inspire hackathons. He has been involved in implementing and developing the Inspire the implementation of the Inspire directive. And as you can see, he's involved in a high number of projects of various kinds, Horizon Europe, Horizon 20, etc. So Karol, I think he represents today Plan for All, who has a data repository and data hub that he will introduce us to is Hub for Everybody. It's a platform that is openly co-created by both experts and citizens. So, Karol, I give the floor to you.
Thank you for the floor. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I will start a little with some two reasons which lead to the development of our solution. One is, as you saw, I'm working long time about European projects, and what was for me the big problem that very often after end of the project disappear the results, the data were not more available, and people very often started from the scratch to do something. So this was the reason why we established Plan for All Association as the organization which is trying to in some way protect data from a previous project and making this data available. Second thing is, as Bente mentioned, I am working a long time around Inspire directive, and now I am also in GEO and other. But what I saw, or what we saw, that there is the big gap between normal user and the Inspire directive. On one side, Inspire directive develop a huge amount of the data in Europe, making this accessible, but most of people are not using this data, or it is very difficult to use the data. So we start already many years ago thinking about some concept which we called social space for geospatial data. And the process of development was long, and now, okay, we are not in the end, because I think the development never can end. But now we have here what we call the Hub for Everybody, and it is space where people can easily share the data, but the data can be shared on the base of Inspire principles, but not necessary for normal people to see all what is necessary, because, for example, for normal people, metadata is something too complex, but generally it is very important. So here you can see scheme, and the development started already around 2003 when we start to develop this MITSCA metadata catalog. This catalog is compliant with Inspire, compliant with ISO standard and other. And we continue with the development with different tools. And now here you can see the structure of this our product, which is composed from many things. And what we see as big advantage, that a huge number, for example, of scientists or people are preparing the data, are not so familiar with web platforms, and it's problem for them to publish the data. So we developed this line, and you can easily prepare your data in QGIS and publish this with plugin on this hub, or you can also download this data from this hub to your QGIS and work with this. Of course, you can work also with web client and transfer to mobile environment. So we developed this line, and what is also important, and it is partly related to what Ian mentioned before me, is that also we would like to make work with the data easy for the people, and also to use this, for example, for education or for some use. We have also here, let's pray, cloud with number of analytical tools and of analysis. I will go quickly through the different possibilities. Yes, we mentioned that we are protecting the data. Here you can see one from our most important things is this open land use. Now we NextGeos use this European open land use in older version. Now you can see the data from open land use 2.0. It is multi-layer and multi-purpose data set, and you are able to combine this land use with also data from satellite images. You can add information from meteorological data and others. So we develop here some model which could be extended and which could be used for different type of analysis. As I mentioned, we are also trying to bring knowledge to the people. So with this technology, we are able to prepare very simple presentation of different topics. We discussed today Earth observation data. So here we can explain what are, for example, different indexes, and people have the chance to test it immediately, this data online, and to see, for example, how this index looks, or they can with the technology which is available on the hub, compare the different type of indexes and to see how different type of indexes are different, to understand for which purposes the indexes could be good. And we are also supporting some analytical tools. Here is application for preparing management zones. And what is important again in the relation with Earth observation data, that we are currently in this moment downloading the data for all Czech Republic from ESA Hub, and as you know, the big problem is the cloud, but it is very difficult to decide it if the data can be used or not. So we are managing all this data, and if you are testing, because you can calculate the zones for every field separately, and if instead of the result you will receive the message that for this field the data from this date are not available. So this is one level of data curation. Second is new things which we are now introducing, and Bente knows that this started at 2016 in Barcelona, when we start to first time discussing about map whiteboard. And we are telling that map whiteboard is something for maps like is Google for Google document for documents. So many people are able from different places in one moment to manage the data, edit the data, and discuss the data. It could be done not only through the web client, but also there exists QGIS plugins, so people are able to connect it also from QGIS or from the mobile. And there are different possibilities where it could be used. For example, for spatial planning, agriculture advisory services, or for voluntary map, when we can work in one moment with the map and tested the data. All is based on OGC standard and other standard like GeoJSON and others. So it is now implemented in edge layers or open layers and QGIS, but it could be eventually easy to prepare plugins for other platforms. And on one side, we are managing this solution on our cloud, but it is easier. You can see here, for example, solution which we are running for Africa. Yes, again, with some educational purposes, it was prepared with a colleague from Nigeria using data from FAO. So we are able to integrate it with these two different data. And again, we are able to combine this with the maps, so it is again possible to prepare very easy some interactive solution. And here again we are also trying to develop open land use for Africa. So again, you have chance to test it and work, and also you have explanation how all this is prepared. So this is big advantage that with this vector we are very easy able to combine textual information with map which was prepared before. We are now part of movement which is called EU hub for data, and also our hub is now one from the hub which could be used for different SME in Europe to test it, their own ideas and to use our tools to develop their own solutions. So this is now possible to find on this EU hub for data list of our services, and to be able to apply for this competition which will be in November. And we are also preparing a special solution for the Czech farmers. Again, we are here able for farmers to use, for example, Inspa Geoportal, and to make the data available for farmer in the form which is easy understandable for them. So it is in principle, last things we are not only doing the serious things. Here is again in the Czech. So we are with Liberec region preparing some application combining education and gaming principles. And again, it is built on this platform. There were last week big event in Liberec region where people draw the maps, and this data are then available again on this copy of the hub. All is based on the same technologies, and it is replicable, and it could be used for different purposes. I think that with this short time, it is all what I can tell. In any case, if anybody will be interested, we can share some webinars explaining more deeply all these solutions.
Thank you very much, Karol. It's a lot of work, and having been part of it, I think this goes for many actually, because it's a huge community effort. If I understand, to summarize, there's a repository made available for all, small users or those who are not finding a place to put their data. It's an availability for them. It's a possibility for them to place their data. And also, since this hub for all everybody, it contains some curation services, right? Some
Yes.
processing facilities. And you told me when we were preparing that you haven't yet found a way to address, or you haven't yet addressed fully the identifiers, but this is in the pipeline, right?
No, identifiers are there. They are based on ISO 19115 standards. Yes, there is identifier in the metadata. So this is implemented. Yes, because this is this unique identifier is the part of this ISO standard. So we are using this. So every data has this permanent identifier.
Excellent. I see. It's time. We should afford some time, even though we are a little bit over, for some questions for Karol as well. I saw some comments. Helen had to leave. Yeah, of course you have to leave. We planned for 1.5 hours. But Joan, you had a comment, right?
Yeah, that was in line with the type of user. I mean, this is something that I know well, because trying to convince even my own colleagues on sharing the data. They, of course, they say, oh, okay, I'm open to do that, but I do not have the technology, I do not have the services, I cannot spend time with this because, there is this next project that I need to attend. So having these kind of tools to attend what sometimes is called the long tail, it's really something that helps to make data fair and to allow these people to make automatic the data management somehow. So I'm pleased to see that emerging from this portal that was presented.
Yes.
Thanks. I think that this was the reason, yes, that for many people it's very difficult to make data available. So we are trying to work on this and build some space. Also, what we are trying, because in many cases, if you have some research project, I hate that there are two things. There is web pages of the project and there is some portal with the data. With this technology, we are able to put all together in one space where people can share generic information about the project, but where also can share the data, demonstrate the data, demonstrate use cases. So this is our idea to make life easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And before everybody leaves, I will encourage you all to put on your cameras so we get to take a group picture as we have done with all the others. Here you come. So this is always the challenge when you have a webinar or an event. People have to go and you go over time. So Eugenio and Anna, are you able to share your video with us so we can have it? Yes, Anna, hi. Eugenio, are you still? Yes. Okay, smile. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This was the last of the data management principles, but we are not quite done yet because we have one last in this seasons of dialogues on the self-assessment tool that will come on Monday, the 24th. I think today has been wonderful. I think we have managed to illustrate the whole spectrum of data that needs to be curated and many different solutions on how to do it, both for very professional, the space agencies, all down to maybe even a single scientist or a student represented by Carol here. So this was a very good illustration. And we also covered several complementarities between the geodata management principles and the fair, care, and trust. Well, not mentioned much care this time, but we actually mentioned trust. So I'm super happy with that. So thank you so much, everybody, and hope to see many of you also next Monday.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
See you. Bye.